What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jimmy Talks. So, with the release of the Epstein files coming out, and everybody sees just how messed up and controlled we are with the foreign country, people are looking around. They're seeing the state of the United States. They're seeing a system that seems hell bent on destroying everything that they care about. And they're seeing a culture that hates them, an economy where they can't afford anything, and a political class that treats them like a domestic enemy. And because of that, there is a growing urge for people to just say like let's just go to war. There's this idea of a civil war. They think it's seductive. It's like they think of a national divorce, or if you're going back a couple years, maybe it's like 2018, kind of like a boogaloo. Whatever you want to call it. I see people saying we need to do this, and they're almost cheering for the collapse. It's like the accelerationists. And they think that a hard reset is the only way to fix all of this. They think that by burning it all down, something will come back that's better. It's just going to grow back immediately. But I want to tell you that that's actually a trap. It's a literal and metaphorical trap, and why I advocate so heavily for building parallel institutions. And I want to differentiate clearly between the two end games we're looking at here, the Civil War path or parallel institutions. Because when you strip away all of this keyboard warrior nonsense and we actually look at what would realistically happen, there are really only two options for how this all plays out. So let's look at option one. This is the one all of the hotheads are screaming for. This is the Civil War scenario. But before we get into that, a quick word from my sponsor. I have here from Miles Rutledge, an English Mad Lad YouTuber who has made and is sending out a nice memorabilia gag gift lighter. It is called the Osama Bin Lighter. The Osama Bin Lighter was thought to be lost in time, but Miles found the old factory that made them and he got them up and running again. If you want to buy one, it's a great gag gift because of how unique it is. It's well made, it's a funny joke. Everybody's going to be like, where the hell did you get that? There is a referral link in the description below, so if you get one, you're also supporting the channel. Thank you guys for your support. Now back to the video. Now, the Civil War option. If we go down this road, you need to understand what you are actually asking for. Let's look at the last Civil War in the 1860s. We are nothing like the 1860s anymore. This is not 1861. A lot of people have this romanticized version of the American Civil War in their heads. They think there's going to be infantry and flags waving and like courageous battles for territory. But in 1860, the average American lived on a farm. This is a key difference here. Hear me out. If the trains stopped running or if the government collapsed, that farm could still mostly function. It was a self contained unit. A lot of these farms, they had wells and livestock, they had root cellars, and they knew how to preserve food without electricity. But today, it's a lot different. Today, the United States is a very complex, just in time, so to say, for everything delivery, packages, stuff like that. It's a big logistical machine. The average city has about 3 days of food on the shelves. A modern farm isn't self contained at all, it's just a factory without a roof. It relies on diesel fuel that comes from a refinery 3 states away. It needs fertilizer that comes from a different country sometimes. And it needs spare parts for those big tractors and combines that come from the global supply chain, which we've seen catastrophically fuck up during COVID. So if you trigger a hot civil war today, the electrical grid goes down. That is a guarantee. I made a video on the grid and how pathetic it was. Check it out in my videos. The grid is just, it's in bad shape. It's in really bad shape. Made a whole video about that. But when the grid goes down, the pumps that move water to your tap stop working. The trucks that bring food to all the grocery stores stop running. You aren't going to see a glorious fight for liberty. You're going to see a large swath of the population just die of starvation, dehydration, and diseases within 6 months, even less than that. Think about it. It's not the bullet that gets you. It's the fact that your neighbor who is dependent on insulin because they're an old grandpa and they have diabetes or something, they just die in a week or two. It's the fact that millions of people in the cities, once the food runs out, will fan out into the suburbs in the countryside like locusts. It will be total chaos. And as if it doesn't get any worse, here's the part that accelerationists always forget about. The rest of the world is going to be involved in this. Do you think China and Russia are just going to sit back and watch the United States have a domestic dispute on a level of magnitude that's so profoundly important, and they're just going to like watch it? No, absolutely not. They have been waiting decades for this. If America fractures into a bloody civil war, foreign powers will definitely start airdropping weapons to people. They will give weapons to everybody. They will fund proxies. They will just give weapons to whatever faction creates the most chaos, not for whoever they want to see win. Because they don't want one side to win. They want America broken forever so they can claim the title of the number one global empire. We have stockpiles of nuclear weapons, biological research labs, and massive military assets scattered across this continent. Not even just in America, in the whole continent. So, in a balkanization civil war scenario, you don't just get some kind of clean break. Oh, it's okay, whatever. It's just a national divorce. You're going to have warlords fighting over the scraps of a former superpower. You don't just get a nice, safe ethno state or a constitutionally limited republic. You're going to get a literal radioactive third world country. You get a standard of living that drops to poverty levels instantly when you are fighting for your life against the elements as well, against disease and a fractured military, all while foreign drones circle overhead. That is the reality of a civil war. Now, let's look at option two. This is the path of the parallel society. This option recognizes a fundamental truth. The United States isn't necessarily just going to explode all of a sudden one day. It's just going to slowly dissolve, and we are watching a slow motion collapse of all that incompetency right now. So, why don't we look at what's going on? The US government is becoming increasingly incompetent. They're all sold out, they're all corrupt, all the politicians. We can't even secure our own borders. Trump has closed it down, but the next president can come in and just open it up again. We can't win a war overseas. Look at Vietnam. That was nothing happened. The whole goal of Vietnam was to stop the spread of communism. That didn't really work. Afghanistan fell right back to the terrorists in like a week or two. Iraq still there. I don't know what's going on with Syria. Nothing really happened. Why are we still there? There's potholes in everybody's street. I know everybody can relate to that. They can't prevent crime in the major cities. The cities have some parts of the cities have just turned into absolute shitholes in America. They're like third world countries. It's insane. They can't even keep the electricity on during a heat wave or during a big ice storm. So this is where the strategy shifts. Instead of trying to overthrow this dying beast, which is dangerous and stupid, by the way, you just simply outlast it. And you let the left tear themselves apart. You let the useful idiots on the right scream at the clouds and do all that stupid stuff. And while they're doing that, you just fortify your own position. So as the state retreats and becomes more increasingly useless, a vacuum will start to open up. This is a law of nature. If there's an open seat of power, it's going to be vacuumed up. If the police stop responding to calls in your neighborhood, which does happen in some cities because they're defunded or demoralized, who steps in? If you have a built-in community defense team, you step in. If the dollar continues to lose its value due to inflation and money printing, and your community has shifted to using fractional gold and fractional silver, bartering, or even something like Bitcoin, it doesn't really matter what you decide to use, you step in. If the public schools are teaching your kids to hate themselves and their history, and you have a homeschool co-op, you step in. So essentially, you aren't overthrowing the government, you are just replacing it by default. This is how civilizations actually shift. It's rarely a singular explosion. It's a transition of trust. Eventually, the local sheriff and the mayor and the average normie realize that your group, the one that were called schizophrenic or useless or whatever, they're the only group that actually has functioning electricity and food and order. You become the government because you're the only ones keeping the lights on. This is a long-term play here, if you haven't noticed. Now, I have to give some serious warning here to everyone who's listening. Be extremely wary of the people online who are calling for immediate violence or a civil war. I'm not saying that either because I'm like a pacifist or something. I'm saying that because I know how the game is played. Historically speaking, when you see someone entering political spaces, whether that's a Discord server or a group chat or what have you, and they start riling people up and telling you to do illegal things, and they're saying we need to take kinetic action, you need to have your radar up because actual federal agents and informants enter these spaces specifically to do this. It is a known tactic. They will incite the most unstable people in the room to commit a crime so they can make headlines and justify their budget. They've already done this in the past multiple times. And the psychological trick they use, it's very like immature and like high school-esque. They will call you a pussy or a grifter or whatever. They'll say, "Oh, you're just talking. You're not actually about anything. You're totally useless." They do this to shame you into doing something stupid. They want you to manufacture a pipe bomb or plot a kidnapping so they can kick your door down and just paint you all as us dissident right wingers as terrorists. So let me tell you something. Advocating for legal homesteading and community building and learning a trade and learning skills is the least Fed like behavior possible. The feds don't know what to do with a guy who just wants to raise chickens and teach his kids math and learn how to weld. You don't get in trouble for that. There is no law just against being competent. So if someone calls you a coward because you won't go out and commit crimes with them, ignore them and block them. They're either a Fed or they're an idiot who's going to get you thrown in a jail cell. And frankly, the people who talk the loudest about air quote revolution are usually the ones who have never been in a fist fight, let alone an actual war. They treat it like it's a video game. Like, hell, I'm a COD YouTuber. I know war is nothing like Call of Duty. They think they're going to be a warlord, but they will be the first ones to die of some stupid disease that's really treatable because they didn't bring antibiotics. So a lot of these people are very short-sighted. Honestly, real power, it's kind of boring. The real power is long-term, and that brings me to the core of this strategy because the long-term move is hard. That's why people hate hearing it. It requires work, and it requires you to get off of the internet and actually do things in the real world. Learning to weld is hard. Investing in silver and actually holding it and not panic selling is hard. Keeping livestock alive and well taken care of is kind of hard. Raising a family and keeping them together in a culture that wants to destroy the nuclear family is the hardest thing you will ever do. So, yeah, most people lash out at this advice because it reminds them that they're lazy. They want the fantasy of the collapse because they think it'll act as a great equalizer that will suddenly make them important. But if you aren't important now, or at least useful, you will be even less useful when the grid goes down. You need skills. So we need to focus on building and moving intelligently. Let's look at the fall of Rome. Historically speaking, people will talk about the fall of Rome like it was just a singular event. It all just exploded one day. Obviously, that's not true. The people weren't wearing robes, and then the next day they took them all off because they're no longer Romans, and they were wearing different clothes. That's not how it happened. Rome decayed over hundreds of years. Basically, as the Roman Empire started to get weaker and stretch too thin, it stopped being able to pave the roads, and it stopped being able to enforce the laws in the outer provinces. It stopped being able to feed people. And do you know what happened? The people didn't just lay down and die. The church and local community stepped in. When the Romans stopped enforcing disputes for one reason or another, people went to the bishop instead, or the community just figured it out on their own. When the legions stopped guarding stuff, the local lords and the communities organized their own militias. They had the food, and a lot of people couldn't read back then, so they had the church do it for them because they were the ones that was preserving knowledge. They had the skills. They offered order in a time that started getting a little bit chaotic, and eventually the people stopped looking to Rome for authority and started looking to their local leaders. And the transition just happened organically and slowly. So by the time the last emperor was gone, he was practically irrelevant anyways. That is basically the model here, and that's why I advocate for parallel societies, because power flows to competence. If you want to win, you have to be competent. You have to be the person who knows how to fix the generator. You have to be the person who knows how to give stitches. You have to be the person who has a network of 5 or 10 reliable, solid-ass dudes who can secure a neighborhood in case some unrest happens. This is basically, think about it this way. This is about building a lifeboat if you don't have one while your ship is sinking. And it's not just a lifeboat for yourself, it's a lifeboat for your culture and your values and your people. It's kind of a big deal. So we're entering a period where the air quote system, which is just a corporate state, whatever the fuck it is now, it's just completely sold out to Israel. They're becoming increasingly hostile and increasingly dysfunctional at the same time. We see it every single day. The supply chains are really fragile. This was very much so, ever so prevalent during COVID 2020. The currency is being debased. We see trillions of dollars being put into the economy all the time. The judicial system is just becoming a weapon. We see lawfare being used all the time. You can't fight this system head on in a kinetic war. They have tanks, they have drones, and they have the media. But you can make them irrelevant, and they slowly are just doing it to themselves, anyways. So let me give you a hypothetical. If you don't use their money and you guys are paying each other, they can't starve you. If you don't use their schools, they can't brainwash your kids. If you don't rely on their police, they can't hold your safety hostage. So, this is what I mean by a parallel society. It's an economy within an economy, it's a culture within a culture. I hope that's starting to make sense now. For people who aren't totally supportive of the idea, you know, if I can't convince you, then I can't convince you. But I think this is the best way out. It's the best way to avoid all the bloodshed. It's the means to get there by civil war is not. It's not worth it. The means to get there is way too catastrophic. So let's get into the specifics of what all of this looks like, because I don't just want to deal in abstract ideas. So first, geography matters. You need to be around like-minded people. It's as simple as that. If you're a lone wolf, you're not going to make it. I don't care how much ammo you have stocked up in your bunker. If you are alone, you have to sleep eventually. And when you sleep, you're vulnerable. You need a community. This doesn't mean you need to move to a compound in the middle of nowhere. It means you just need to know your neighbors. You need to identify the people in your area who share your values, and you need to build a tribe. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I live in a city, I have a job, I have a mortgage on my house. I can't just buy a ranch in the middle of tomorrow. That's fine. In fact, building a parallel society in the city is even more critical because that is where the chaos is going to be. But you have to understand that doing this in an urban environment is kind of like playing a game on hard mode. You can't rely on isolation like you can in the countryside. You have to rely on insulation instead. It's the opposite. So, if you are in the city, you cannot build a compound, so you have to build a network. I would call this a soft secession. Go try to find people by going to a high friction filter. Don't look on Twitter. Don't look on whatever. Go to a boxing gym. Go to a martial arts gym. I think you guys, that's why I always say go to the gym and stuff like that. You meet people there. Go to the shooting ranges. Go to a traditionalist church, not these insane ones. I'm not even going to get into that. That's a whole entire thing. But anyways, look for the guys who show up and they work hard and they have families and they just seem like a decent dude. You don't have to agree with every single little thing that they say. But if this is a trustworthy, seems like a good guy, why don't you just go and be his friend? This is your vetting process. Once you find 3 or 4 guys you trust, you now have something going. You have a tribe started. And also, you can't set up a perimeter in the suburbs. So you just build a neighborhood watch. You don't need a militia patrolling the street in full kit because honestly, that just attracts the police. You need something like some sort of system. You need a text chain that alerts everyone when a strange van pulls up, or a criminal element enters your neighborhood and they see 10 military-aged males standing on their porches watching them. They will probably move on to a softer target. This is called deterrence. You can solve disputes between neighbors without calling the cops. If you can handle some kind of dispute, like, oh, about property lines or something like that, or like a noise complaint internally, you just made the state irrelevant in your daily life. And also, let's be real about the logistics. You cannot grow enough calories on an apartment balcony to survive. You need to build an urban and rural bridge. Your group in the city needs to pool money and make a handshake deal with a farmer that's like 50 miles out or something. Maybe you all buy a whole cow. Maybe you all buy a shit ton of grain in bulk, drive out, pick it up, and then distribute it within each other. The farmer gets the cash or the gold he needs, whatever, and you get a food source that bypasses the grocery store supply chain. And I know I'm going to see this in the comments. Well, Jimmy, this just seems kind of hard. Yeah, no one ever said it was going to be easy. This stuff that takes work. I said that earlier. So we see this in real life, these kind of parallel societies. Think of it like Chinatown or Little Italy, or the really big example is these Jewish neighborhoods in New York City, and stuff like that. These guys have their own kind of police force. They have their own kind of ambulance. They have their own schools set up. They have their own ethnic grocery stores where they all shop to keep money in their little areas. They all spend their money together. They even have kosher farms outside of the city where they basically, the ethnic grocery stores, these Jewish grocery stores, they get first dibs and priority on all the food that the farm grows, or the whatever, the livestock, what have you. You get what I'm saying? That is literally a parallel society right there. They're doing it right now. And I don't want to hear anything like, oh, they're only getting away with that because they're Jewish. No, you guys can start it too. The problem is you can't do things without being attacked in the legal system if it's based off of like race or something like that. The best way to move about that is whether you think it, whether you want that or not. It's not what I'm saying. It's the system. The best way to protect yourself is to put it under the nomenclature of religion. That is how the Amish do these things. It's because it's a religious organization. You're much more protected in the court system if you put it under the brand of religion or something like that. We see Return to the Land is actually in a court battle right now. That's Arvol's thing, and they're disputing right now if what he has going on is violating people's civil liberties if they wanted to move there. So I think that is a put it under, just say, oh, it's a Christian thing, and I think it's better for that anyways. Because honestly, when you look at the outcomes of these things in the long term, you have a bunch of people that are the same religion, the same culture, same background. They're most likely the same race. You're pretty much going to get the same outcome at the end of the day. But anyways, let's go back to Chinatown and Little Italy. I just explained the Jewish one. Those communities, they had their own banks. They had their own internal dispute resolution systems for whatever it was. They had their own schools, and they had their own supply lines. They were a state within a state almost. They were just in plain sight too. That is what you have to do if you are in the city. Keep your money at your little circle, swap services. If one guy's an electrician, fix the mechanic's wiring. The mechanic will fix your truck instead. And, for YouTube purposes, if you catch what I'm saying, you should always pay your taxes. But if you do this hypothetically in a Minecraft world, there would be no taxes involved. There wouldn't be a paper trail either, but I'm not advocating for that because this is YouTube. So just value staying within the community, right? So next, skills. This is the hard part for a lot of people, me myself included. If your entire value to the economy consists of sending emails and managing spreadsheets, you're in kind of a bad spot. In a declining empire, the value of abstract labor goes to zero. The value of tangible labor goes through the roof, though. Can you grow food? Do you know how to grow food? Can you purify water? Can you build a shelter? Can you do some basic car repairs? Can you use a radio? These are the skills of the new people in charge. So if you're one of the young patriotic Zoomers listening to this and you're wondering what to do with your life, maybe go learn something with skills. It doesn't have to be a trade, but I do think trades are AI proof and recession proof. There's always going to be something that needs to be fixed. That's just what I think. Nothing wrong with college either. There's plenty of good college degrees that teach you skills. I'm not going to go through all that because there is a lot of dumb shit in college as well. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. And that's not what the video is about anyway. So learn how to build things, learn some skills. These skills, like I said, they're inflation proof, they're collapse proof, and they're also AI proof. Now, third, economy. We all know the dollar is on a death march. It might take years, it might take decades, but the math just simply doesn't work. The mathematical equation never works. The debt is too high. They will just continue to print it into oblivion. Everybody knows this. You need to be operating outside of that system as much as possible. That's why I'm so big on gold and silver. That means holding physical assets. You need land, you need tools, you need ammo. You could use Bitcoin or Monero if you want. Some people in my comments absolutely hate whenever I mention crypto. So you know what? I'm just going to not really talk about crypto that much. Buy it if you like it. Don't buy it if you don't. I'll leave it at that. But it's still a way outside of the system. The point of me mentioning that is that it's a way to pay people outside of the system. Right. So you need to be able to trade with your community without the eye of the state watching every single transaction. Next, health. The medical system is crumbling. We've seen that over the last few years, especially with COVID. You cannot rely on the hospitals to always be there or to even treat you fairly. We've seen people getting turned away for surgeries because they didn't get the COVID vaccine. So, with that in mind, you need to take ownership of your health. There are people in medical school right now who are cheating on their tests with AI. Kind of fucking crazy. That's one of the other reasons I say go to the gym. I don't just spout out these platitudes just because it sounds good. I don't always explain things the best. I know I understand that. I try my best, but when I say go to the gym, this is one of the reasons why. Get in shape. And if you're overweight, try to lose some weight. You don't want to be a liability. I'm not going to be a harsh dickhead about it. Get strong. Everybody can get better at something. But also learn some basic medical skills. I've had people ask me a couple of times, hey, Jimmy, how do I get into EMS? How do I learn that stuff? If you have a volunteer fire community near you, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them will pay for you. They're like, hey, if you come sign a contract, be a volunteer EMT with us or whatever, volunteer firefighter, we'll pay for your EMT course. You can get it for free that way. Or at the very most, you can just learn first aid and CPR. That's still more than what other people know. Learn how to treat common illnesses, especially when it comes to the herbal stuff. And I'm not on some crunchy granola, whatever I hate that term. I've seen it. It's just so millennial coded. But anyways, I'm not on all of that. Like, I'm only on an apple diet. I only eat apples. I only eat meat. I think you should eat like carbs sometimes and like vegetables. There's nothing wrong with that. But anyways, you can treat common illnesses with some home remedies. This is really some mama and papa kind of stuff, but I digress. If the pharmacies close, you need a plan B, is what I'm trying to get at. In an urban group, you might be able to even pool your money for a serious medical kit, and you can designate someone to be the medic of the group. Not necessarily a doctor, so to say, either, but someone who knows how to treat a trauma in a living room or something like that. This is all part of preparedness, what I'm really big on. But finally, spiritual and cultural fortification matters as well, because this is kind of like, let's think of it like it's a computer. This is the software of the parallel society. You cannot build a new world on a foundation of nihilism, because we see nihilism running around rampant nowadays. What exactly is that giving us? You need a moral framework. You need to preserve the books and the history and the traditions that the current regime is trying to erase. You homeschool your kids not just to protect them from drag queen story hour, but also to give them an education that makes them capable of thinking critically, which is something that public schools haven't done for a very long time. So when you do these things, you are effectively seceding from the corrupt system without ever picking up a gun and firing a shot. You're just stepping out of the matrix. And this pisses off the establishment so much. Have you noticed that? They hate the homesteader more than they hate the rioter, because they understand the rioter. The rioter plays into their game. The rioter gives them an excuse to deploy the SWAT team and have them pressure you even more. The government, we need more anti-Semitism laws or whatever. But the man who's just self-sufficient in the community that takes care of itself, they're terrified of that because they can't control it. So whenever you see a domestic terrorist group apprehended on the news, pay attention, because there always seems to be a couple people missing from that incident. Or it turns out the explosives were provided by an undercover agent. It happens over and over again. Don't be a statistic. Don't be the guy that they show on the news to justify the next Patriot Act. Instead, be the guy that they can't touch. And be the guy who is so embedded in his local community, and he's so essential to the people around him that removing him would cause the local order to just unravel. This is a war of attrition. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to be easy. It is a war of endurance. Why do you think I put out this political stuff, but then I also tell you guys to be the best versions of yourself? I don't just do it hustle, grind, culture, brah kind of stuff. This all ties together with my vision. That is parallel societies. And it doesn't just involve a rural homestead either. You can do it in the cities, and I just told you how. So let's go back at this. Let's go look at this again. The outcome of option one, which is the Civil War, is death, destruction, and possibly foreign occupation. It's the suicide of the nation. And if you were to try and trigger it, you're probably just going to get shot by the cops anyways before you even try to do it. So, yeah, if you want to be edgy and all that and Fed post, you know, go on right ahead, I guess. You're just going to end up in a jail cell or dead. Or you can do the outcome of option two, which is the parallel society. This is the rebirth. This is the preservation of civilizations through a very long, bad time. This is how societies stay up. Guys, have you seen the Jewish people and what they do? Why don't you actually read about what they do? Because, you kind of have to read books from all sides. Before I even got red pilled, when I was just a normie kid, yeah, I would read. I read the Republican side and the Democrat side, and this is the conclusion that I came to. Read The Jewish State by Theodore Herzl. He literally lays out what they're going to do and how they carried it out. Because you think about it this way, this community, they put their whole entire livelihood based off of pogroms and getting kicked out of different countries. It's pretty valid. That's why they're so self-sustaining. That's why they're still around. We're kind of just following the same exact model that they do. And I know someone may be hearing that and they just get mad because they're like, dude, you want me to read about the Jews for? Actually, what they did was pretty smart. That's why they're still around. That's why they're so powerful. So the Civil War stuff, anyways, it's not as cinematic. It's not a war movie. Also, when you're not calling for civil wars, you're not going to get as many likes on Twitter or YouTube. It's not going to get you all the clickbait, but it's the real path forward. It's really the only path that leads to a future where your children can live free and safely. So just let the left eat itself apart. They're getting abortions and castrating themselves and turning transgender. Let the right-wing people still think, and all the normies, that voting is still a way and that they're waiting for a politician to save them. Let the cities crumble if they refuse to enforce the law. Let the state flail around in its incompetence, because you don't need to save their system. You need to build yours. Rome didn't explode in a day. It just slowly faded over time. And as that started to go away, the churches started taking in charge, and also the local community started taking charge. So I think that's where we're headed, and that's why I think this is the most realistic and the best option. That's why I'm so big. When people have been wanting me to explain parallel societies for a little bit. So I hope this video clears it up for you. I really appreciate you if you're still sitting here and listening to all of this, because this is one of the most important videos I've ever put out. Hell, it's more than a half hour long. Y'all know I don't really put out videos that are that long, right? So yeah, stop waiting for a savior. And this collapse, these people that want to collapse, it's not fun. It's not a fucking game. Start digging in. Sorry for cussing. I'm trying to not cuss as much, but it's not a fucking game. I need to cuss because I want to explain how important this is, right? Start building stuff and start networking. It is so important that you do that. Okay, this is why I want you guys to be the best version of yourself. That's why I don't get on here and say crazy ass shit all the time. And people, they'll get on my ass about it and be like, why aren't you calling for a war? You're just a grifter if you're not just calling for a war. I'm just looking at this realistically. This is what the minds do. This is what the thinkers do. This is what somebody who wants to be in a serious position of power, not that I necessarily want to be, but I'm finding myself as somebody that people look up to. And this is just the most realistic way. This will minimize casualties. It'll also make everybody stronger. I think this is the best way forward. When all the dust settles, the people left standing in all of this and the collapse of this declining empire, the people left standing won't be the ones who posted the most angry memes or the ones who tried to fight the military with whatever guns they have. The people left standing will be the ones who have food and the friends and the competence to lead. Power flows to competence. So be competent. All right, guys. That's all from me today. God bless you and your families. America first and America only. Jimmy Talks out.